only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 54 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. So it's been about a month since I spoke to you last. I've had a really nice breakaway, and really it's been partly enforced as well as partly voluntary. It's been very important to me to have some peace and quiet. Lots been going on in the world, as you know. And I think, as I explained in my previous message, I think what was happening in my life was that something was going on, and I wasn't too sure whether there was some form of psychic attack or something that was going on. Again, if you've been following the news, you'll realize that so much of the things that I spoke about in the last few podcasts have all come true, and we seem to have been moving rapidly towards some form of new awareness, some new disclosure of things that are going to affect us all spiritually, as well as socio and economically. I think I was really feeling very oppressed by this because I was being affected tremendously from a psychic point of view, which was having a really bad effect on me generally. So it was very good that I stopped it, and it had also allowed me to take some time off, having done almost back-to-back podcasts for a year, with ever-increasing emotional significance with the various things that were coming through. I never intended to make this podcast about aliens and space creatures and things like that. And if you followed the podcast since last year, you'll know that. But what came through, certainly in the last quarter of the year, seemed to show how it was all somehow related. And of course now I've had that demonstrated to me in terms of what's going on in the world right now, but also through my spiritual contact. But I have to be honest with you, I really don't know where it's all going and what quite the time scale is at the moment. Various things have happened. I think we were setting ourselves up for all sorts of terrible disasters. In some respects, these disasters have happened and we've moved on. In some other respects, they haven't happened yet, and we're still waiting. I don't want to dwell on that because this just depresses me, and I think it's not something you particularly want to hear either. What I really want to do is what I started off in this podcast doing, which is to talk about spiritual stuff. To talk about the communication I have with higher powers, and to be able to help people with their understanding of what life after this physical life is. And I think I've achieved that. I think I've managed to achieve my original goal. Just about everything that can be said about what will happen to us after we pass away has been revealed, and I've put it in my podcast, so you can certainly hear that. So the direction the podcast was taking was not really the direction that I wanted it to take, because I didn't want it to turn into just another extra terrestrial sort of podcast. There are plenty of video podcasts. There's plenty of stuff out there if you're interested, and people far, far more informed and educated than me when it comes to UFO phenomena. But what I was particularly interested in was the link between that and the psychic phenomena that interests me. And I think probably in December, I was rapidly coming to the conclusion that that's it, really. I'm not sure what to do with Series 2. But you'll be glad to know, and I think I'm probably quite glad to know too, that in the past week, the News Nation podcast that I've actually listened to a few times and quoted, and I think even probably played a few snippets from. Ross Coulthard, who's the presenter, massively hyped up last weekend that he was going to be able to prove without any doubt about the United States government's UAP retrieval program, and that he would show a video of a UAP that was being retrieved, as well as talking to the pilot, who was a very senior military person. He was coming forward and he was going to talk on camera about his work retrieving all sorts of things in covert operations for the United States military industrial complex. Well, I did, obviously with tremendous interest, watch that over the weekend, and you can see it on YouTube. I'll put the link in my description at the bottom. And without any doubt, it is an intriguing episode. It doesn't prove much, really. I mean, you can see what appears to be a white egg-shaped object being dropped onto the ground from underneath the belly of a helicopter on a long 100-foot line. However, if you've been watching all these things like I have over the years, you'll know that anything is easy to fabricate. I mean, it could well be a real egg hanging on a piece of string. You don't know from the video. It's all shot in green night vision binocular light. There's no real bearing down there so you can get an idea how big it is, although they say it's over 20 feet long. Yeah, it's just unfortunately another one of those rather blurry so-called proof videos. But and I, in that respect, you can tell I'm already a little bit suspicious about what was there, and I don't understand how, if he's flying a helicopter with such precision, he was able to, I presume, to stick his mobile phone over the edge and film this. And again, and if it really is what he says it is, a retrieved alien craft, you wonder why he would be picking it up from one place and just dumping it in another place. Why not in an airport or in a military base or something? So there's just so many, to my critical faculties, so many inconsistencies and strangeness about it. But if we do take it that this guy is talking the truth, it is an amazing video. But what really intrigued me, though, was his description. He comes across as a really nice man. The guy clearly was amazingly emotionally affected by what he was doing. And I think not just with this particular UAP, but with another UAP that he had actually picked up. And he describes in an incredible way the onslaught, the total onslaught that his mind and body has received during the build-up to picking up that object and moving it, but also since. And it's actually affected his physical health as well. And he's been, as many of his team have, been subjected to all sorts of medical examinations, and it would seem that they have shown the sort of precursors of either radiation exposure or some exposure to something which has clearly made them unwell. But when he was talking during this documentary to Ross Coulthard, he did mention how the feelings that came across him made him cry as he came towards this object. And he tried to be as professional as he could, because obviously flying a helicopter at night, doing a job that he was doing, it wasn't very conducive with crying. But he couldn't contain himself. This object, he felt, was linking to him in some psychic way. It was affecting his emotions, and it was filling him with a sense of joy and love, but equally a sense of sadness and song, he described. And he felt it was such a moving experience, he started crying. And this experience hasn't left him. He feels like this contact opened up, and he is now somehow joined to whatever was in that UAP or whoever has sent that UAP. And he believes this is the point, is that the communication between these objects and mankind is, or through them, through the extraterrestrials or extra dimensionals, is through emotion and feeling and the mind, which would explain a lot of these reports from people over the last year or so, or 2 years or so, where these objects appear to be flying in a way that it's unreasonable to expect them to be propelled by anything that we would understand, because they don't seem to have any form of engine or flight surfaces, and they seem to do extraordinary things and maneuvers which are totally impossible, not only because of the structural strain that would place on an object, but also if there was a person in it, I believe they would just be ripped to shreds by G-forces. So it's impossible that these things can be flying in a way that we would understand. But the objects that seem to have been retrieved or seen don't exhibit any characteristics of flying objects that we would understand. So it makes perfect sense that, well, therefore they are flying in a way that we don't understand yet, because we haven't learned that technology, which is, by the sound of it, these objects are summoned through the mind, and they are controlled by the mind. And they are, if you like, an outward manifestation of an inward ability to control something. Very much the idea of the psychic idea of being able to make things happen through your mind, or psychokinesis. And there's been a lot of discussion that the American government has been working on those sort of principles. They even have words for it all. I can't quite remember what they are, but sort of the psychic ability to be able to summon this object and to control it is something that I think, if you believe this, the American government has been working on for a long, long time. And I think Ross Coulthard was very convinced. He saw demonstrations that weren't necessarily in that film, but he saw demonstrations from this team of people who can summon these UAPs through their mind. Fascinating stuff. But nevertheless, I think what I just wanted to put on message for today was how it's all so close, how the UAP phenomenon, or visitations from interdimensional beings, can be really put down to a psychic phenomena. And the way they are affecting human beings is something which is of a spiritual way, a spiritual effect. Those of you who follow this type of thing will know that, and I've mentioned it before, that there was a famous Rendlesham Forest incident in Suffolk in England, which is considered by many to be a massive event in terms of ufology, as big as Roswell was in the United States. I'm interested in it not least because my family live there, and I've been to Rendlesham Forest, and I've seen the site where a supposed interdimensional craft landed, and US airmen witnessed it and recorded it. But what was again interesting, those people who actually witnessed it, in the statements that they gave, described how it affected them emotionally as well as physically, very much. I mean, I think they were quite sick and very weak, but also they were overcome by emotion. So again, I think this is interesting that this comes through again. So with that tremendous interest, I was obviously speaking to people, and I spoke to my wife, who's an incredible skeptic. Of course, she thinks all of this is just a load of rubbish, which is fine. It's healthy to have a skeptic in the family, and I'm of course a skeptic as well. But I think what interests me now, and what interests me for the rest of this podcast, is a question that she posed to me on Sunday, shortly after I'd watched this documentary, is that if the UAP phenomena, as I increasingly believe and I'm increasingly hearing, is related in some respect to interdimensional beings who connect to us in a spiritual way and represent, if you like, a form of being that exists in the same space, or maybe in different dimensions, but in the same sort of realm as those who pass on from our physical life that we call dead. If that's the case, then really what we're saying is that people who pass on from this life transcend this life into a new realm, a new spiritual realm. Those realms we have seen many times in this podcast, and actually gone on journeys through them with the help of Neil Peart, which was fascinating stuff. But beyond that, there are other realms that I couldn't see on my journeys in those podcasts because they were just too high, if you like. The frequencies were just incompatible with my consciousness, my ability to see them, which I think is the purpose. I mean, that's the whole point. You can't necessarily be able to see everything because some realms are just way beyond our ability to comprehend or understand, let alone physically try to see or to explain or to describe. So clearly, all of this is somehow being validated by what's being disclosed slowly by people who are in the US military. But my wife would argue, well, why is it just the US military? Why aren't we hearing about that in Germany? In a way, I think she would probably believe it more if she saw it in a German newspaper or heard about German military people coming forward and saying that they have seen UAPs. Well, I have friends in Germany who listen to this podcast and have known me for a while. And, indeed, there have been reports of UAPs flying over German military bases as well. But maybe it's my lack of great German knowledge, but I haven't heard the same sorts of things. Though my German friends do tell me there are a lot of German podcasts out there, but they're not something that I'm particularly watching. So I think it does happen. It's just that I'm attuned to English-speaking stuff mainly. So that is what I relate to, and I can report back on. The second question my wife posed to me, which is something which is very fascinating, is, well, if this in some way can explain people's religious feeling, or if it's having a rapturous effect on them, if this is something that could be a way of explaining religion, or indeed people's religious experiences, whether having the experience of meeting angels or dead people, or ghosts as you'd call them, or magic, black magic, white magic, whether it would be ancient Egyptians and carvings found in their artwork supposedly depicting aliens and alien craft, or any number of these things. Could it be that all world religions somehow are really actually based on perhaps visitations and sightings of extraterrestrial or extra-dimensional beings and craft? Is it that the ones that have been visiting us for thousands of years are still visiting us now, or as I found in other podcasts I've done here, are actually living amongst us, maybe either under the oceans or under the ground, or even able to sort of shift the way they look to us through special technology, or even just being able to appear from a dimension close to us but we can't see, but they can then come into our dimension and we can see them, and they just flit backwards and forwards, and that's probably why we don't always see them. I don't know. But does that in some way explain religion? Well, I need to talk to Titan, my guardian angel, about that, because I don't know, and I'm hoping that today I can get hold of Titan, the first time for a while. Part of me feels I'm not going to be very successful because he hasn't really been around a lot, but that may be also because he's been giving me some peace and quiet. But I'd be very interested in asking him about that. And, what relation do UAPs and these current events have to a religious experience? The other thing I'm fascinated by, and this is a discussion we had on Sunday, is that if these visitations would explain religion in some way, if perhaps all these things that were written in various holy books and scriptures and manuscripts over 1,000 years ago or more, if they'd actually relate to interdimensional beings rather and super beings rather than how would we describe it? God, or sons of God, or prophets, or all the things that are described in the Abrahamic religions. If this would somehow explain some of that, or at least maybe set the seed for it, which was embellished in writings and poetry and storytelling over hundreds of years, if it was at the basis of it, what would that do to people's religious belief now? Would the proof of interdimensional extraterrestrial beings call into question people's religious belief? Would they suddenly stop being Catholic or Islamic, or would they suddenly stop being Jewish? Would they stop being Hindu? Because suddenly it's questioning their whole religious belief. I'm not so sure. I think religion is extremely stable. It's been around for thousands of years. It's gone through the scientific period where people were questioning religion because of evolution. It's gone through the Industrial Revolution. It's gone through the modern ability to withstand critique from science that alleges that it would be impossible, for instance, as I think is believed in Islam, for the world to be a few thousand years old, because look at the fossil record, which are millions of years old. Or, how do you square the idea in Christianity that we as humans are made in God's own image? Therefore, if people from other dimensions who clearly would look different from us, or from other planets would look different from us, how do we square ourselves with that? Because would that mean that they have another God? Or did God make them as well? Or do we need to re-examine the writings in the Bible and religious documents and say, are they just allegorical? Were they literal? Did they really mean that? I don't know. I find this completely fascinating. My feeling is that I don't think it's going to mean much at all. I think there's plenty of space for different approaches. And so far, as I said, I don't think religion has completely suffered. I mean, I believe 80% of the world's population believe in some form of religion. It's atheism and non-belief is very small. It's only about 20%. And, those people, billions of people in the world believe in religion. So it's a very important subject. And so if things came along that would cause people to doubt that, what effect on social and economic things would that have? My wife feels that it would actually cause massive religious wars. You'd have people killing each other, maybe even openly in the streets, because, people would be vying for the truth. And maybe they would be so aggressive and so unhappy that their religions were being called into question or being questioned at all, that they may end up going on the rampage, maybe. Or maybe if extraterrestrial or interdimensional beings came and explained to us maybe their religions, would people feel more comfortable gravitating, sorry about the use of that word, towards these extraterrestrials or their religion? Would their religion then supersede perhaps the religions that we have? Or would they come along and say that they actually find our religions to be fascinating? Might they actually confirm the existence of gods and things that have been written in our holy books? And maybe they would just reconfirm that it's actually true. So it might have the opposite effect of encouraging people, the 20% who don't know or don't care, to suddenly be interested in religion and actually care very much and maybe even be converted. That could be a truth. Or could it be that people will understand that it's all science, and there is nothing mystical, there is nothing religious about it all. Maybe all religious feeling, maybe all psychic feeling, maybe everything that has been described to me by Titan in this podcast can all be explained in some form of super science that we're just not really very familiar with yet, but are just scratching the surface of in terms of our understanding of quantum mechanics, for instance. Maybe if it was explained in terms of science, and we began to learn the new language of science around things, maybe it would become as obvious to us as just picking up a newspaper and being able to read it. Maybe it's not such a mystery. It's just that we're not used to being able to interpret things. I found it very interesting the other day that I actually read that, if you come to somebody and you ask them a question, and they will generally give you a straight answer. But if you ask somebody a question and then they come out with something completely random, which is not really an answer to your question, it kind of destroys your agreement with that person that we have understood as humans in our interactions for hundreds of years, which is you ask and you get something usually familiar, even if it's not the subject maybe not familiar, or the content may not be familiar. The interaction process of ask and get something back in a way that you sort of expect it to come to you is something that we're all very familiar about. But if somebody, for instance, comes up to you and asks you the time, and you turn around to them and you say to them, the wall around my house is 9 foot high, it completely stops that interaction, and it actually confuses the human mind. And this type of emotional stoppage there is something that hypnotists use in order to hypnotize people radically, very quickly, because it causes the brain to go into a place where it's unsure, and therefore it's like an opening and allows a hypnotist to suddenly go in and say sleep at that point. I find that very fascinating. So if we have got to that stage now that we are, like a hypnotist, going to change our language so we can get into a new form of thinking, a new way of understanding, I think about now is the time that we should be doing it. So what I'm really saying is that the questions that we're asking will come back with answers that we just don't understand, and they won't be in the format or the language or the accepted way that our brains will be able to receive that information. And I think we will be so disorientated by the information that's coming to us that it'll cause, as happens with the guy who found or had to move this UAP object in the video I was talking about earlier, it'll cause a reaction, a deeply emotional reaction that can actually trigger maybe almost a psychotic breakdown, because the brain is going somewhere that it just cannot handle. And the only way that the brain then can relate to it is to sort of almost switch off. And maybe it's a bit like the experience that some people have when they take LSD or mind-altering drugs. It actually affects the way the brain functions to the point that you start imagining things, seeing things, hearing things, or maybe even just close down. So I think that is what we have to be prepared for, is that all the stuff that is coming to us is not going to be coming to us in a way that we can understand. I think the religion is already complicated enough, and obviously they're very, very intellectual people, theologians, who for hundreds of years have done their best to try to interpret religion, which is very complicated, in a way that the average person in the street can understand. And even now, of course, there is a huge amount of information that people do not understand and cannot dissect. But you can imagine that if we're now talking about very, very advanced technology that would appear to be magic to us now, if the fundamentals of that technology are being explained to us, it's going to have an effect on our thinking in a way that is way beyond our understanding now. It would be literally like taking somebody from the Egyptian era, a simple farmer, who one minute is just working in the River Nile basin, and then transporting him to 2025 and sitting him in NASA or something, and showing him the capabilities that we have. I mean, it would just completely and utterly blow his mind. But we're talking a couple of thousand years. What I think we're talking about here are interdimensional beings that have probably been around for hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions of years. There's a very famous physicist in England, a popular physicist who does a lot of television programs. I think his name is Brian Cox. And he's talked quite openly about the possibilities of extraterrestrial life existing within our own galaxy. I mean, our own galaxy is just one of millions of galaxies. But in our own galaxy, there are probably trillions of stars like our sun. And they reckon nearly every star probably has at least one planet going around it in orbit, in a solar system, maybe with more. So there must be trillions and trillions of planets. And if you look at the age of our universe, which is billions of years old, you're talking about huge amounts of time and huge possibilities that make it, nearly 100% certain, just in our local galaxy, that there is a planet which has the same intelligent life as us, or maybe more advanced. Now, that's just talking about life. But if we're talking about interdimensional beings that exist, where time is manipulated or isn't as we understand it on Earth, you're talking about interdimensional beings that have access to what would be in our time terms, trillions and trillions of years of experience, of history, of knowledge and learning. You just can't even begin to understand what that would mean in terms of our ability to try to communicate with someone like that. So these questions are fascinating to me. And really just in the last 10 minutes of the podcast, if I can, I want to see if I can't contact Titan and see if he's got anything to say before the end of today's episode. So I'm just going to go away now and do all my various little routines that I do. And when I come back, I hope Titan will be back with me. Okay, so I'm back now. And I want to see if I can find Titan. So hold on. So, okay, so without any doubt, to me, this is not Titan. I have that feeling this morning, and I had it last night, that another entity was going to come through. It's not Titan. In fact, there is no name. It is an entity. I'll try to describe what I'm feeling. I'm feeling a tremendous emotion as well. I feel that this is a very nice entity. There's nothing dangerous or dramatic about it. I also feel that sense of loving and compassion as that pilot did. I don't feel like it's taking over my body in any way. But I feel that I'm being introduced to this energy, this person, in order to be able to pass some information. Okay. So in terms of the information I'm getting, I'll try to describe how it's coming to me. I feel like it's just being almost like fed into my head, and I'm having to somehow use my voice and the way I talk to try to describe, to break it down, to make it come out. It's very similar to the way I talk to Titan, although with Titan it's much easier because I actually do sort of hear the words. I feel the presence a lot more. With this, I feel like I'm talking into a very big, empty tunnel, and my words are going through this tunnel. And what I'm getting back is not sound. I feel I'm getting the impressions in my mind, but mainly visual impressions. I feel like I'm seeing things and feeling things rather than hearing things or being able to describe what's being said to me. So that's where I am. So what is being given to me is this impression that yes, there is a confirmation that all the feelings that people will have when they are confronted with interdimensional beings, and people are being confronted, I'm being told, on a regular basis. They are being confronted in their prayer. How prayer is something that has been in all religions nearly for thousands of years. This is, if you like, the way that the human species is able to reconcile what would be considered to be almost crazy and ridiculous, an ability to communicate beyond speech or beyond writing or other forms of communication that we would understand. Prayer is a psychic format that we all have and that we've always had, but a lot of people don't rate it. A lot of people don't understand that it is actually a very powerful tool. So I'm being told that what is being experienced by people when they come close to a multidimensional being or a communication with a multidimensional being is the nearest way to describe it is almost like praying and getting on that wavelength in the mind. With that person or that being that you're trying to have communication with, or is having communication with you. So the communication is something that, in that respect, no matter how complicated the information that needs to be transferred, because it goes through the sifting mechanism of a human brain, it gets simplified. And it gets translated down, sort of downloaded in a way that is almost, I'm using these words now, but almost dumbed down so we can actually understand it, because we couldn't understand it in the pure form that it comes. It has to be reinterpreted by our brains into a way that we can understand. Okay, so I would love it if whoever this is, and if you don't want me to know who you are, that's fine. But if you could try to explain to me then if the phenomena that is being seen by people, that is through multidimensional beings visiting us, is this the archetype of all world religions? Is this the religious feeling that has been described over centuries? Okay, what's coming through to me is that every religion is a snapshot of information that has been received by people in a particular time a particular time period, and they are seeing that snapshot through the lenses of their understanding at that particular time. If a multidimensional person wishes to communicate to us now, we will see it in terms of our modern understanding of science and technology as we are now, and we will be then learning things according to the patterns that we're used to in terms of communication. But if we're talking about a human being 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, that information was naturally translated in a particular way that they could understand, in forms of allegory and stories of heroes and monsters and of gods. This is something that was easier for people to accept in the terms of their living at the time. But things change through time. So I'm being told that if we wanted to start it today in 2025 to understand a visitation from an extraterrestrial, from another dimension, we would start at a completely different level of scientific and science and knowledge, and therefore interpret things in a completely different way from something that would be presented to us 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. So, in that respect, all religions, all faith is genuine and is rooted in this same interpretation of a singular thing, and the singular thing has not changed. It's merely us in terms of our development as a species that has changed. Okay, so what would happen therefore if it becomes more and more public that these interdimensional beings have been playing such a role in our evolution, if you like, as human beings? I'm being shown immediately fossils of dinosaurs, and it's sort of being explained to me that if we are in this day and age digging up something that is millions and millions of years old, and we're seeing an amazing animal that does not exist anymore, that is how I should see things that are being revealed to us now. If we actually saw something, if we actually managed to see an interdimensional person or their technology or their craft, it'll be as wondrous as seeing really as the early paleontologists did when they first saw dinosaurs and thought, my goodness, where did these animals come from? Well, it's the same now. It's in the other way, but we're seeing things that will be to us amazing animals with amazing things that we've never seen before. But it will be accepted as much as that, and it won't change really our previous understandings of history, because it's seeing things moving forward now. It's going to change the way we see things in the future, but it won't change the way that we understand our history, because there are so many different forms of life that exist not only on this planet, but in all the planets that have life throughout eternity. All would be as wondrous for us to look at as if we were digging a hole and finding a dinosaur for the first time. This is not just for us. This is for other interdimensional beings that visit other worlds. They will be seeing life forms and ways of life and structures of society and belief systems that are just as magical to them as we would be appearing to be magical, as we find them to be magical. So I'm basically then getting this confirmation that all world religions and all feelings are all genuinely relevant and real, and they are all forms of interpreting one singular idea. And this singular idea is an idea that is almost impossible for us to really understand in any other way than through allegory, through storytelling, through our imagination, through using methods that people would be able to understand. And it all has to be done that way, because the mind cannot understand it any other way. It cannot take the real level of knowledge of what it is in this life. This is something. It's being explained. It was the same problem that I did have, where you can go into other dimensions, but you won't be able to see them. You won't be able to understand them. You won't know what's going on. It'll just be like a foggy mist, and I saw that. And that's entirely as it should be. But as you move through the dimensions, as you become multidimensional, and we are all multidimensional, but we're living in this particular dimension with a small access. This person is saying to me, a small access, left and right, up and down. We have a small three-dimensional access, but we don't have the multidimensional access that we need in this life. This will only happen to us through tremendous practice or through leaving this physical body. Okay. So lastly, I would really like just to ask about what is happening now. Can you tell me a little bit about why now and what's happening with these UAPs and all these visitations and all this disclosure? It's happening now. It's being echoed back at me. You're basically saying, I'm basically saying what this person is saying, which is it is happening now. It's going to be happening very, very soon. People are going to see it. He's saying that we are ready for it. It will not be the shock and the surprise that we feel it will be. It'll be new information, but he says that at last we will begin to see what multidimensional beings we are and always have been, and this should be a great leveling exercise that will make everyone feel the same. There should be no feeling of superiority or of people being better than each other. It will enable everyone to realize that we all share a huge commonality, not just on this earth, but in galaxies, in the limitless distances of time and space. We are all part of the same thing, and we're just going to be confronting that. And it's been something that's been worked at for a while. However, there's always been a resistance, I'm being told, by people who represent us as human beings, to allowing this information to come out in the wrong way. I'm being told it's not so much about greed. It's not so much about deception. It's not so much about the technology or whatever that is, because the technology that we would learn from other dimensions is something that if we wish to have it, it would have been shared with us long ago and we'd know about it. That is just not important. What is important is our ability to use information and our ability to share information and to learn from what we are given. Are we ready as a species to move to a new era, a new understanding of that is much more peaceful and more collaborative and more loving and more trusting and less selfish? And apparently we are. And that's the process that we're going through. And we shouldn't be so confused at the moment by the technological aspects of it. We should be concentrating far more on the spiritual aspects of it. Okay, I think I understand that. Okay, well, I think I'm getting a feeling that that's really all that I'm going to get today. But I think that's pretty amazing. It's happening soon. It's happening really soon, sooner than you imagine. And it's not going to be bad. It's going to be fine, and we will be confronted by an unbelievable feeling of love, a feeling of belonging, a feeling that our questions are being answered, that all the things that we have wondered about for thousands of years will be answered. It won't be easy. There will be conflicts, and there will be strife. There will be people who rebel and fight against it. But it's got to happen. It's the only way that we can move forward. Okay, on that note, thank you very much for coming through, and thank you everybody who's listening. I hope that was an interesting one, and I'll speak to you all again soon.